Can you hear me? Okay.
I would love to call the meeting to a quorum, but we are going to be short of a quorum. Nonetheless, we are going to discuss the only case that's on the agenda tonight, so could we just go ahead and have an unofficial roll call anyway?
Yeah, roll call. Carrie Hawkins Ash, absent. Andrew Fell.
Here.
Tyler Fitch.
Here.
Lou Hopkins, absent. Danny Otto.
Here.
Michael Pollock.
Here.
Bernadine Stake. Marilyn Upabant. Okay, so we have 4 people present.
We have 4, so we can't conduct any official business, but we do have a case to consider and at least send some informal comments to the City Council. And Mr. Myers, would you like to run through that with us?
Sure. You know what, I suppose I can do it from here. This is, for the viewing public, this is called Champaign County case number CCZBA 743 AT 13. And this is a case where the Champaign County is proposing to amend their zoning ordinance. And this is a text amendment, so it doesn't change the zoning map, but it would change basically what the rules would be for future land uses. And at the last meeting, you all reviewed this and had some discussion, and also I think you had a presentation or some input from Sangamon Valley Public Water District. So what I will try to do tonight very quickly is just boil this down to the essence about what this case involves from our city staff's viewpoint, and take any comments that you might have so we can pass them along to the City Council. And the obligation of the city, by the Plan Commission and the City Council, is to review county zoning cases, because under state law, cities with comprehensive plans could, if they choose to, protest changes to the county zoning ordinance, meaning that that change would require a 3/4 supermajority of the county board before it could pass, if there's a protest. So these cases regularly come before you. Most of the time we recommend no protests. Sometimes we recommend protests. But the essence of the case is really this. I've spoken with the Village of Mahomet. Village of Mahomet regularly, as a course of their approval for subdivisions out in the county, they do require typically that subdividers include in their covenants that annexation will happen once the Village of Mahomet boundaries reach out to that property. So it is, as a matter of course, the Village of Mahomet does this for a couple of reasons. This is their hook in order to get annexation into the Village of Mahomet. City of Urbana, we have our own hook for annexation, and that's for sewer service. Anyone wanting sewer service from the Urbana-Champaign Sanitary District, they're required to either annex into the city or sign an annexation agreement. Village of Mahomet doesn't have that option because they have this rural water district / sewer district that provides sewer. They don't have an agreement with the sewer water / sewer district. And the Sangamon Valley Public Water District provides water and sewer service to customers both inside the Village of Mahomet and outside. So imagine if on the outskirts of Urbana there was a sanitary sewer service provided, and so subdivisions could be developed outside of the city, but on our edge, how that might change our future opportunities for growth and development, and eventually, just the entire city. So Village of Mahomet has that typical requirement. This particular case, in fact, involves a subdivision of the Sangamon Valley Public Water District. They have approval from the state and a loan from the state EPA to expand their water plant. A few years ago, during the drought, they experienced high demands for service, and they realized that they needed to improve their service. So they have this loan, and they have approval to expand their water for both drinking water and for fire fighting purposes. They also have approval from the county for county zoning to expand their water treatment plant because it's located out in the county. But as part of this development, apparently, they need to subdivide the land or are seeking to subdivide the land, and they're in this disagreement with Village of Mahomet over whether, a couple of things. One, whether they're going to agree to annex as part of their subdivision covenants, or two, whether they're even subject to requirement to subdivide. I mean, there's even that fundamental disagreement, whether they even need to subdivide. They're claiming that they're exempt, I think, under the State Plat Act, which you sometimes hear that claim. But anyway, to make a long story short, the county staff I've spoken to, this is my take on what's going on in the county. They feel like that the water district has approval to expand, but the county can't issue their use permits to do so because there's part of the county rules are on themselves. They're not going to issue any zoning use permit, county zoning use permit, if it violates the municipal subdivision code of municipality. They've followed that for years, but I gather they feel like that in this particular case, what's happening in this disagreement between the Rural Water District and the Village of Mahomet, all of these residents, or these customers, are really the ones who are losing out here. They are people who need improved fire fighting capacity and also drinking water. And so these, I think it's like 4,800 customers, are really the ones left in the middle. So I think the county feels like that this is such an extraordinary case that they really just want to step aside and not be the mechanism by which the village is being able to force the water district to sign this annexation agreement. I think they feel like that this is basically an extraordinary case, and they want to let the water district and the village kind of fight it out among themselves on what, whether or not they're violating a municipal subdivision code or whether or not they even have to do the plat. I think the county says, okay, let those guys work it out, but at least our own rules aren't going to be holding up this zoning use permit approval, and we're not going to be part of holding up this water and firefighting for enhanced service for these 4,800 customers. So it seems like to me that they feel like this is a highly unusual case, but the gist of it is this: the county is proposing to amend the county zoning ordinance such that it's very, very specific. If it's a rural water district in the situation where the municipality that is not a home rule municipality is requiring them to annex in X, Y, and Z, then the rural water district can apply for a variance. They have to go through the variance process with the county and prove that they have a hardship in which would allow the county to issue their otherwise acceptable permit for a zoning use permit. And that's the gist of it. Now, before, the county didn't have this provision about to exclude non-home rule, to exclude home rule municipalities, but that was added after City of Urbana staff suggested that maybe this is a way to try to, what's the word I'm looking for, narrow any concerns that this might apply to other situations. So we suggested, well, why not just add this, it has to be a non-home rule community. So the county staff has agreed to do that. In my mind, that really changes the complexion of it, because now, in my thinking, this might as well be some county zoning ordinance change that only affects Foosland or, Gifford or something like that. It really takes Urbana out of the equation. And so because of that, our thinking is we don't see a compelling reason to register a protest. I believe Village of Mahomet's already going to protest this. I understand that City of Champaign is looking at a protest. So regardless of whether City of Urbana protests this or not, I think it's going to require a 3/4 majority at the county board to pass. Now, when the rural water district went for their zoning use permit and got their special use permit to operate or expand, I understand that the Village of Mahomet objected, meaning that required 3/4 majority, and the county board actually passed it, I understand, unanimously, which is pretty amazing because there's, 20, at that time there was
So it's
maybe.
likely they will do that again.
So my thinking is, I wouldn't doubt if that same thing would happen again, if they would pass it even with the 3/4 majority. So city staff's thought was, if it's likely it's going to get passed anyway, why not try to make it better? And that's why we thought we would get involved and try to narrow the scope. I totally understand another way of thinking, which is we don't like any references to municipal subdivision code or not meeting that. I mean, so we should just completely, protest it on that grounds. I understand that viewpoint too.
Well, are there comments to pass along here short of an official tally of the Plan Commission to let
Well,
the folks at the City Council know
I
what
guess
we're thinking?
my comment is that last time when we talked about it, it was a bad precedent to set. And even though the language is a little better, isn't it still a bad precedent to set? Followed up with, can't the county issue a whatever notification to proceed that they have, conditionally that the Village of Mahomet has to approve it, so they take themselves out of the equation, just like sometimes we get a occupancy permit, a conditional occupancy permit, because we still have to install an exit sign. And as soon as that's done, we have the approval. Can't the county board do the same thing, that just tell the water company, as soon as you work this out with the village, we'll approve it?
Mm-hmm.
And they've taken themselves out of it, and then it's all kind of a moot point.
Right. Yeah.
Because they're essentially just trying to not look like the bad guy in the situation, correct?
I think if they leave it up to the City of Mahomet to make the decision, they've really already made their decision.
Well, their whole,
What would
they want to do
cause
this.
them to change?
But isn't the reason they want to do this because they don't want to be the ones holding up the process?
I don't think they mind holding up the process from
You're
what
talking
I've
about
read.
the county or?
The county.
Oh, the county.
The county. They want to do this so they can sort of take the burden off their shoulders of it being their
Rule.
doing, that this can't go forward. And can't they just do that with some kind of amendment that says as soon as the village approves this, we approve it also?
What makes you think the village will ever approve it?
They won't, but they're not going to anyway. But
But with this language, this expansion can take place without the permission. I mean, Mahomet will
Right.
probably protest, and if the county board passes this narrow interpretation by 3/4 or more, then they can proceed with their business, and otherwise they won't be able to, as I'm looking at that.
yeah,
I mean,
see
clearly what's
that.
going on here is that, as a city, our interests should lie with Mahomet in protecting our mile-and-a-half jurisdiction, but clearly our emotions and our better sense does not. And as I looked at
Excuse
this, I
me.
mean, this is totally narrow, the way that they've drawn this. And I don't think that Urbana is putting ourselves at risk in terms of a precedent with the way that this has been presented. That's just my personal view.
Could I-
I'm sorry?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mr. John.
My emotions and common sense, aren't with the water district, and I speak as someone who started a water district a decade ago, was very successful. I think that there were good reasons why the county code is written the way that it is. And what they are doing is saying, we're allowing the emotional appeal. Are you going to deprive these people of water? Establish a bad precedent where you go to the county board and we're going to change a code to address one and only one thing. It smacks of the...
Which this clearly does.
Right, but the issue is, the county, Mahomet can protest these. There's no reason for the people out there to suffer from water. They have to negotiate with the city of Mahomet, and that's why the language is there. And they're saying, we don't want to. We've got our fiefdom, we want to protect it. And there's no reason. Who are they protecting? The pipes are there, the money is there. I think integrated systems make more sense than having a lot of little parallel systems out here. I don't know the details of that. I don't know anybody personally involved. I don't even, but I just think it's a very bad precedent to say we don't want to hold up this grant when the lever that Mahomet has is that this is a well-established principle of the mile-and-a-half jurisdiction.
It is kind of the equivalent of spot zoning.
It is spot zoning.
It's very narrow.
And
Yeah, I had a question right down that line. How many non-home rule units, how many governments does this apply to?
One.
That's what I thought. That's
Yeah.
special legislation is what that's called, which is a law that applies to one entity and one situation. The state of Illinois cannot pass legislation. The Constitution, Illinois Constitution, doesn't allow it. I don't know about what the county's governing bylaws say, but this is special legislation, and I would support a resolution of protest. So I'm in agreement. I think it's a bad precedent. I did have a couple of issues with this specific language, assuming that I wanted to register in addition to general sort of disagreement in line with Mr. Feld, Mr. Otto. One is that I don't think that the language that I think city staff had inserted, and I think it's well-intentioned, but I don't think it does anything, and that is when such improvements are deemed necessary to serve the public health, safety, and well-being of the residents of Champaign County. That's sort of just, it goes without saying, right? I mean, we wouldn't approve a zoning or a variance request or the
Not
county
in
board.
public interest.
Right, exactly. So, you can leave it in, you can take it out. I don't think it adds or detracts. The other thing is point 1 under there. So the issue of, okay, so they could go ahead and build, but then they're saying you still have to be in compliance with the municipality's subdivision requirements. But you don't have to be in perfect compliance. So what does that mean, and who makes that decision?
Sounds like they have to be in compliance except in this case, is what it sounds like.
It's too vague. If you don't have to be in compliance, perfect compliance, then
So
this
as
thing
you
needs-
look at this, this
yeah.
does in fact present the possibility that this might be a detriment to us at some point and in some way.
Well, yeah, sure, that's exactly right, yeah. And it establishes a precedent that all they have to do is add another use, another type of facility.
And that could be an hour, mile and a half.
It could be an hour, mile and a half.
Well, it sounds as if we have I'm still kind of on the fence about this. I have mixed feelings, but it's clear that the sense of this particular group is that if we were going to vote on this, that we would vote to protest this.
Okay.
Pretty clear.
Okay. Any other ideas, comments?
well, in terms of, I have my general concerns, but then point 2 looks to me like it's saying that what we're doing should not be interpreted as approving or support of the violation. But, obviously it is.
It's like we're gonna look the other way is almost,
I
In this
just don't
case,
like
right.
that really is very misleading. It's like the Supreme Court saying in Bush v. Gore, Gore v. Bush, whichever way it was, this is not a precedent
We're not gonna
that
determine
anyone
the
can ever
outcome, but-
appeal to. We're just saying, this time do this. And, that sort of an approach is just bad policy.
Just for clarification, I think what they mean by the technical requirements of the plat is if the plat otherwise meets all the standards for, minimum lot size, the street widths, and the plat itself meets all of the standards of the Mahomet subdivision code. I think that's what they mean by that.
Except for the one that says they need village
Except for the
permission.
one that,
So you have to meet all the requirements except that one. That's kind of what they're saying.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a technical requirement or if that is a political requirement. I don't know. I don't know how you characterize that.
I'm assuming if it's in the law that it's technical.
Yeah.
My assumption.
Yeah, I just don't know what that means, to say, on the one hand, you have to comply, which implies that Mahomet they still couldn't build unless Mahomet issues, approval.
Someone's going to have to judge whether it's in technical compliance. So it's either going to be the Village of Mahomet or the
Well,
the
it's their
county
subdivision
board
code.
or
Who
the-
else is going to decide for them?
Yeah, if not Village of Mahomet, it'd have to be the county board or the county zoning administrator. So,
It's not clear they even under their own rules have the right to do that. How can they make a decision about what is technically adhering to a municipality's subdivision code?
mhm.
They don't get to do that. So I guess that I guess our message to the city council is that we have concerns about this unofficially, because we
Okay.
can't take a vote on it. And although it probably doesn't make any difference in terms of protest or no protest, given that Mahomet's going to protest, that this does present some possibilities of a downside for the city of Urbana at some point and in some way.
I got a follow-up question, I think. And I don't know, Robert, if you know the answer to this, but was the water company there before the Village of Mahomet organized their subdivision regulations or their annexation agreement? So, meaning,
Yeah.
when they established their water company, were all these regulations in place so that they knew that if they did something, they would be annexed?
I don't know who came first exactly. I've heard secondhand that at one time Village of Mahomet had an opportunity to serve the certain watershed, and they decided not to.
Probably because there was, at that point, this village had not expanded to the point where it made sense to them
Yeah.
financially.
Right.
Would be my guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, serving a different watershed is always for sewer service, which is,
Now, as their city has grown, that
Yeah.
has changed, so my guess is that the answer is that the water district was there before all the rules were in place. I don't know that, though. Any other comments?
Yeah, I think there is some significance to Urbana registering a protest, although it's assumed Mahomet will and perhaps Champaign, and that is to register for county board members who are looking to see who cares about this. Does anyone care other than Mahomet? And so even though the trigger for a supermajority only requires a protest by Mahomet, I think for Urbana to go on record sends a signal to other county board members that we see issues here.
Well, it
that
sends a
concern
signal
us.
to Urbana's county board members, for sure.
Related to, this is a comment related to your question about who was there first, and the way fiefdoms and taxing bodies grow. The water company that I helped start is a member-owned cooperative, and actually is not taxing authority. We can't levy taxes on people. But when we were trying to get going, we didn't have a source of water, didn't have a treatment plant, didn't have anything. And so we approached the municipalities, Arcola and eventually Arthur, and said, look, we don't want to do this. We would like it if you did it. But if you'll cooperate with us and sell us water and so on, whenever you want to absorb this, that would be great, because we will get rid of one unpaid board of directors that has to meet and budget, da-da-da. And so, I'm a firm believer that there is a solution to this, and they'll work it out underneath the parameters of the current law. I don't know what the solution is, but they'll work it out. And the people out there will get water and have fire protection.
Or they'll have a new government. Any
The
other
people,
comments?
the citizens will not be victims by this because, you know, if the board of the water company holds its ground and says, we don't want to do this, the citizens will say, why are you so invested in your position, and ask questions. There's a solution there that doesn't involve changing the county legislation.
Any other comments? If not, having actually conducted no business, we're adjourned.